Piggy.
Lights, camera, action. You're on.
We're going to talk about some stuff, and you're not going to be on the TV, okay?
These dogs are great.
I love you.
Hi, this is Cristina Dam, and this is Liberate the Podcast, where we educate, motivate, inspire, and liberate your consciousness.
Hi there, welcome to another episode of Liberate the Podcast. Today we have Jeff Bomberger with us. He is an author, a very amazing intuitive, and somebody that is just wanting to spread light, helping people awaken their soul force. So we're going to be talking about his book and a little bit about his journey and so many other things, and you guys know how these podcasts go. We start and we just kind of see because we'll let the conversation carry us. So Jeff, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I just wanted to, kind of start out letting people know a little bit about yourself and, maybe we can hear a little bit about what your book is about and what inspired you to write it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my journey with metaphysics and spirituality started pretty young, actually. My dad walked me into a store, not unlike this one, when I was about 12. Curious to get tarot readings, and him and I sat down, kind of had our minds blown by what the woman was able to share with us, and that was like the beginning of my journey. Really, I found meditation like not long after that. By 14, 15, I had a daily meditation practice.
Wow, bless your father. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
Taking you to get a tarot reading at 12?
Yeah. And
amazing.
You know what's cool about it too? I love to point this out because I think it trumps a lot of, or I should say it trounces a lot of stigmas. Mm-hmm. My dad is like, he's a gas man. He's a football player. I was a football player. So we're talking like masculine stuff.
Yeah.
And it was my dad who took me into a psychic shop.
Yeah, so not like the yoga loving vegan mother. It was
right.
It was the football playing gas man,
Yes.
like manly man father. I love that. But I mean it shows that I think that a lot of people have a stereotype about who fits into different molds and different things, and spirituality and energy in our source and our light force knows no conditions or boundaries or stereotypes. It's a vibrational energy, and it's there for all, no matter what, social decree, race, belief system, extracurricular hobbies or passions. It doesn't matter, and even regardless of religion,
Mm-hmm.
Spirit is spirit. Mm-hmm. So by 14 you were meditating.
Yeah. Again, because my journey started then. My dad and my mom were interested in this stuff, so we had the psychic medium John Edward had a tape out at the time, a cassette tape, Unleashing Your Psychic Potential, and that's where I found meditation, energy protection, how to connect with your guides, stuff like that. And that became what is now a lifelong quest for me. And it was a quiet practice. I always like to say it was a quiet practice at first. Like I was bringing through messages, very clear. I was very clairaudient when I was younger.
Are you still now?
Still am.
Okay.
Yeah, I still am. It's super strong still.
You were like I was once upon a time, and then somehow I. No, which does happen to people, by the way. Sometimes people are very much an open book or a channel, and they have an instance where they feel that they need to cut themselves off from that for whatever reason that happens,
right?
And then they have to find that again.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Actually, that I want to use that as a little bit as like that's a bit of what I get into a little bit in the book. I talk a lot about the chakra system.
Okay.
Because I found when I discovered the chakra system and how it was connected to energy and intuition and how the different intuitive senses are really just extensions of the way our chakras metabolize energy, so to speak. When I found that and I began a daily chakra practice is when all of the kind of psychic potential, intuitive potential in me started to really open up. And it was funny, as I've had guides along the way, because this journey started for me so young. It was an Akashic Records reading where these two women, and I said they sat down, they did the prayer, and they're like, whoa, you have tons of untapped intuitive potential. And I was like, really? And I've always considered myself intuitive.
Yeah.
But it was that little nudge, that was about 8 years ago, that I really like opened up.
Yeah, you took a dive. You didn't just stick your foot in anymore. You were like, all right, I came to swim.
Right. Yeah. Because like I was mentioning, it was a very private practice before. I figured, I'm not sure if this is what it is, but I get guidance, I get wisdom. It helps me in my life. It brings me peace. It brings me clarity. When I listen, things work out well. When I don't listen, I tend to get the same advice over and over, you know?
Get the same pattern over and over again. Isn't that right?
Yes.
You know, like we get an inkling and we get an intuition. We don't listen to it. And then we find ourselves days, weeks, months later saying, why didn't I listen to that?
Yeah.
You know, I knew better. I felt it. I even have that sometimes when I get like this vision, like, I need to grab my keys or don't forget my credit card, and then like I'll like lose it, you know? And it's just like, but it was like the slow motion image that was so vivid, and then I'm like, man, I knew I was paying extra attention to it for a reason, right?
Absolutely. And that happens that happens to me all the time too.
Yeah.
And it was the more I paid attention to it, right?
Yeah.
The more like, I'm going to start listening.
Yeah.
You know, and over time, and that's essentially what leads me to where I am at now. Like now I'm teaching workshops on using meditation as a gateway to opening up our intuitive abilities and just being more sensitive. And that comes with a lot of discipline, a lot of practice, and then the big thing is just like trusting, is learning how to trust. I think that's the biggest thing that's come out of this for me, especially as it's morphed and shifted from just like a private practice to doing something that I was called to, work with others and introduce or help facilitate, open up doors and windows for people. Along that whole entire process, the biggest message has really just been to trust, to learning how to trust those subtle cues, those things that emerge.
Yeah.
Like you said, a slow motion vision,
Yeah.
Whatever it is that comes through for you. Learning how to trust that stuff and then walk it is when I think we can start to see like real transformation.
I like it.
Yeah.
And so then when did you write your book?
Yeah, so I wrote the book at the beginning of 2019.
Okay.
The story of the reason it came out, I think...
Yeah, because I always like to hear that, because, it's a lot of work to sit there and be like, all right, I'm committed to writing this book. And there's normally there's a purpose or a message or a reason behind it, right? That you feel like you want to dedicate all those hours and time and energy to teaching, and essentially. So what was that for you?
Yeah, I before I wrote the book, I had been working, I was working on several political campaigns as like a digital content producer.
Okay.
I did like documentary style filmmaking and content production, some commercial stuff too for these political campaigns. And I was also working with the Homelessness Services nonprofit, who's actually located not far up the street here, PATH,
Okay.
People Assisting the Homeless.
Yeah.
I have been working with them for 2.5 years, and I came to the end of the election cycle in 2018. And I just was looking at these issues that were being tackled socially. I was looking at the work that PATH does. It's so important, alleviating human suffering on the streets. And I just was kind of struck by, all this is really important, but if we don't get to the root of it, if we don't kind of get in there and get into the spiritual core of why there is so much suffering in the world, then this is going to be a long process, like of trying to transform from like the top down or from the outside in. So there was a lot of months of my guidance was telling me to get quiet, to sit in tarot. I kept pulling the hermit card, and I just wasn't hermiting enough. I was like,
Isn't that funny? Like when we get the same card over and over again, and you're like, you resist it so much. You're like, no, I don't want to rest. No, I don't want to hermit. No, I don't want to turn inside. I want to go outside. Or
totally. There was always something better to do.
Yeah.
Or at least there was like, oh, but this project's got to get finished. Or, well, the election's almost up. After the election, I'll sit down and I'll get quiet, And I was meditating. It's been a discipline for years for me, going back to when I was a teenager. But apparently it wasn't enough. Apparently I needed to slow down and reflect a little more. And I kind of had a pretty gnarly shakeup at the end of the year. It had been a stressful couple years. There was a bit of a fracturing in a relationship that I was in. And I kind of had, for the first time in my life, like a real serious nervous breakdown. And like a full-on panic attack and everything. For someone who's very like in tune and with his body and connected to that, it was weird to have an experience like that, to feel like an uncontrollable kind of breakdown. And that's when I was like, okay, all right, I'll stop. And then literally within days, I started writing and channeling, and like the first draft came out in like 5 weeks.
wow.
And stars aligned. I reached out to someone who I knew had just published, and I said, hey, I know you did something, like this thing just like poured out of me. What can I do with it? And she gave me some guidance, and I connected with a friend who was an editor who was in this space. She does intuitive healing and stuff. She was my editor, and she was a huge help because she helped bring a lot of the personal, there's a lot of personal stories in there. There's a lot of personal experience to help kind of contrast the practices and the explorations that we can do, things that might open us up. But it's very much me just opening up my heart and soul, putting it on a platter and be like, hey,
here you go.
This is what was going on. This is how it helped. Maybe it's helpful to you. Maybe not, but the goal is hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah, so it was just kind of like this book that was inspirationally like channeled through you. And as a result, what do you think that the main message or the core of it? You know, I get that, you know, these are things that was helpful for me, that hopefully it's helpful for you, but I mean, what do you hope to get what do you hope readers get from your book?
I hope the number one thing is just an increased awareness.
Okay.
But the other main thing I would say is being inspired to really seek your own truth and your own connection to the soul force, to the life force, to God, the universe, however you frame it.
Yeah.
Those are the most important things. You know, if you don't connect with my background and my stories and my experiences, if nothing else, I hope that it inspires people to really start to walk that path that we all really truly have to walk down, you know, to really awaken. And when I say increasing awareness, to me, that's the number one thing, because if we're just a little bit more reflective, Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yeah.
You know, if we can get people to engage in that, no matter where you're at on your journey, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise you're just going through the motions, and it's like, I was talking to somebody the other day about that. It's like, you know, so many people, they just seem like they're existing, not living. They're just going through motions, but they're not, they don't have a thirst or curiosity to learn or grow or understand their self better, or to learn and expand and experience the world more. And it's like, if you don't have one of those, hopefully you have both of those, but if you don't have one of those, what are you doing here? You know, like, and it's like, you know, but I like the quote that you just said. And so, if you may, if I can ask, could you share a couple of your stories and the different things that are in the book that are these, your ways, your discovery, your findings, you know? Like something that's in there when you said your soul's kind of on a platter in that book.
Definitely. You know, the thing that jumps out to me is it gets brought up a few times in the book because it was such a unique experience for me. I'm very lucky, I'm very fortunate. I grew up in a really incredibly loving household. My dad was taking me to get psychic readings at 12, you know?
And
my mom was
meditating at 14.
Yeah, like it was really, that's really nice. You know, that's an amazing thing. So some of my lumps in life came a little bit later as I kind of entered the adult world, you know, as a pretty open person, you know, and trusting and loving and caring. And I expected that the world was just going to kind of reflect that back at me when I went out into the world. And, you know, having started my spiritual practice so early, I was in a relationship for about 4.5 years. It did result in a marriage and then a subsequent dissolution of that marriage. But it was an interesting time for me because it was a time when I turned off a lot of this stuff. I wasn't journaling as much. I wasn't channeling as much. I wasn't meditating as much. I felt like I had lost my path because I was kind of like caught up in this
spiral
whirlwind of a relationship that was, frankly, it was really emotionally and it was emotionally abusive and verbally abusive, and for a sensitive person as well. Yeah, it was tough to see my way out of that. Yeah, it was eventually returning to those things and acknowledging that inner knowing, like, this just doesn't feel right. This behavior isn't okay. This kind of stuff is not all right. I had to really acknowledge that, and that was hard, realizing that it would cause such an upheaval. Yeah. You know? And after that, it was like a catapult. once I made the choice to leave that relationship and to try and heal and to try to reflect on how did this happen? Like, how did I go from over here to like all the way over there?
Well, sometimes one step backwards is 3 steps forward, or when you deviate the path, you're actually getting closer to the path because you actually realize how important it is to be on the path. Right?
That's the truth.
It's like you're driving your car and you go off-roading and you don't have a Jeep, you're going to be like, this is not fun to drive on, and you realize how amazing and smooth that beautiful road is and how much better it is for your car, right?
That's a great analogy. Yes, absolutely.
But otherwise you're like, it's grass and gravel and sand over there. It can't be too bad.
Oh, sure it can.
So then you kind of were more on fire then at that point, more committed. And, what do you think that the biggest lesson for you on the deviation was? And like going through that whole experience? Because I think a lot of people that are listening, we go through things, and at least from my perspective, it's always judge not thyself, right? Because everything you're learning from, everything you're growing from,
Right.
Yes, you could have had it easier. Yes, things you could have been further along. Yes, you could have done things differently, but you went through that for some form of purpose, and it gave you something, and for that reason, you're forever changed, grown, and evolved, So what do you think that was for you?
Kind of the lesson?
Yeah.
The big lesson? There's two things that kind of immediately jump out. And the first thing is, one, really trust your instincts. There was plenty of moments when it was like, I don't know about this. I'm not sure this is going the right direction. That was one of the big things. Trust yourself. But the other big thing for me, and this is always a work in progress, at least it has been for me, I learned that I needed to be more vocal, kind of more immediately about when things kind of started to go awry, especially in personal relationships. It was something that I had kind of no problem addressing, like in my work life or in friendships and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, in a romantic relationship, I had a really, really hard time saying, hey, that wasn't cool.
Yeah.
That really hurt. Or this is what's going on for me. Like, I didn't talk about those things, and I recognized coming out of it, there was, fundamentally, we were two very different people that I don't think were a great match.
Yeah.
But I think that I could have probably helped us both by being a lot more communicative about what I was truly feeling. I mentioned in the book that I had to look back on that and recognize that I was fundamentally just being dishonest in the relationship. And I don't mean it in a deceptive way, like the intention was to deceive, but I was not being truthful about my feelings about things. And that that allowed a lot of things to mount.
Yeah.
And I think it led to a lot more pain, probably for both parties, than was necessary. And so that was what I saw as my role in that dynamic.
Gotcha.
How I had to come out of that and be stronger. It was like, I need to communicate better. I need to communicate more clearly. I need to be willing to acknowledge when something's not working for me, or if I'm in pain, which is a hard thing for guys to do. Say, I'm hurting right now. I'm vulnerable.
Yeah.
My feelings are hurt, Yeah. That was messed up. And
I think it's a hard thing for a lot of people, but it's especially a hard thing for guys,
Yeah.
And so you found that, and you found that power and that truth as a result.
Yeah.
And then you're helping people get that in their self, too, through it. So when you talk about, like, awakening the force, what do you really mean by the force? What is the force to you?
So actually, I borrowed the term soul force from Gandhi.
Okay.
So in Gandhi's nonviolence, some of the language that gets used, the Sanskrit terms, eventually were translated into soul force. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used it in his Christmas sermon on peace, of meeting physical force with soul force. And really, soul force is love in action.
Okay.
So being both a student of spirituality and of nonviolence, being a very politically engaged person, I'd always thought we had really approached this, we've really approached the concept of nonviolence and the power of nonviolence as our culture from intellectual perspective, and from the perspective of how was Gandhi and King, how were Gandhi and King effective in their ability to move people socially, right? But I thought at the center of that, in the core of that, the part that was being overlooked is the deep, deep, deep spirituality and the deep faith, truthfully, and love that needs to be present for those social movements to have any kind of power or potency.
Gotcha.
So it was me going to the root, saying, oh, I understand where Gandhi and King, I intellectually get where they were coming from. Like when I hear their approaches and their strategies about how they achieve social transformation, I got it. But my thought was, looking as an observer, saying, but do we understand like what's really at the depth? Like what are the depths of spirituality and love and faith that are required to transform society from the inside out?
Yeah.
Those were people who had a tremendous amount of influence and power.
Yeah.
And so I borrowed that language because I think what we're looking at is a massive social, societal, world, global transformation, right?
Huge one.
A massive one. It's the shift is here and it's already going, And so when I was coming up with kind of the language I wanted to use to kind of package this stuff, I wanted to call it Awakening Soul Force because to me, this is a long journey for myself and for all of us, from getting to the core, getting to the root, to getting to the seeds and the foundation of truth and love and faith that are required for the social transformation we need. So this is kind of like the first step.
I like it.
Yeah.
So kind of tapping people into that their truth, and then that power, and it's that power from the soul that really pushes the force of change in the world and change in their own life.
It's love in action.
Love in action.
Love in action. And that's why kind of at the center of it is like meditation, for me, because meditation is where I have found connection to what I refer to as loving awareness.
Yeah.
And in sitting with that, the way I would, if you and I spend a lot of time together, there's a good chance that you're going to pick up some characteristics or some traits or some influence from me. And there's some things that you do that I might be like, oh, Christina's got some cool thoughts or ideas, or I might pick up some quirks or whatever. That happens when we hang out with groups of people and friends, And I've come to see this the same way, is like if I give myself time to build a relationship with loving awareness in meditation and in stillness, well, of course I'm going to adopt some of those qualities of non-judgment, those qualities of forgiveness or being merciful, the stuff that's at the core of, I think, what we really need to shift. And that's why meditation plays such a huge role. It has played such a huge role for me, and it's why it's kind of like at the core of the book. And
so a lot of different meditation exercises in the book?
Yeah, a lot of different types of meditation. I really found, I started with John Edwards' tape, which was a lot of visualization stuff, which was really great because I have a really squirrely mind.
Okay.
I have a super hyperactive brain, and I'm a very visual person, so that worked for me, But when I found like Buddhism in college, and I've like the work of Thich Nhat Hanh and like mindfulness, that had, has played a huge role in my development. So there's mindfulness in here. There's rhythmic breathing, just being conscious of our breath.
Some visualizations, I'm sure.
There's visualization ones, yeah. And then even I encourage people to express themselves through art, whatever they want to, because I found art to be a meditation. I found filmmaking for me was a real gateway into becoming more intuitive and kind of more tapped in, being more observant. Losing myself kind of in the moment. Those are meditations. Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget, we get caught up in like, oh, I got to sit cross-legged, in a room. Yeah. But anything that like you lose that sense of.
Hey, anytime you go into that zone and you're just perfectly, and so the walking meditation, there could be, cooking can be a meditation,
totally.
Like going through anything like that. But it is super powerful, and I think that more people need to find that and realize that there is not, I like that you say that there's a whole bunch of different ways to meditate, because I do think that people limit their self and don't do it because they think that there's a one way for it. It's like kind of when people have a misconception on working out and they think like, oh no, then that means that I have to spend 2 hours at the gym doing this. Well, no, you can play tennis and that can be a workout. You can go for a hike and that can be a workout. You can ride your bike and that can be a workout. You don't need to go to a certain structure and do certain weight reps in order for it to be a workout, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing for meditation, and it's, kind of just starting to come more broad, because a lot of people have also that misconception of, I had to sit silent for like an hour. Come on, I can't even sit silent for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, actually, that's like, just such a small sliver of different types of meditation,
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I really like that you're pointing that out, because I think our tendency to try and provide structure to everything or to put things in a box, it works against what we are. I believe that we are vessels and a channel for the unlimited, source.
Absolutely.
So it's up to us to discover which way it wants to kind of come on through us. How does it want to express itself through us? But I love that you're pointing out, we don't have to put it in boxes. It doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't have to be overly defined.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I like that. All right. And what kind of, you teach classes and things, right? And you teach meditation. Where can people find you?
So you can find stuff on thesoulforce.com. So you'll be able to find all kinds of information.
And do you sell copies of your book on there too?
Yeah, you can grab copies on there. Amazon, Barnes & Noble carry the book as well. There's an audiobook version. You can find me on Instagram at the Bomberger. And then I'm going to be here at Liberate doing the meditation intuition workshop that I call Connecting to the Truth Within. And it's an introduction to the intuitive senses, like what they are, how do we tap into them, and I take people through kind of like these little exercises so that they can see, oh shoot, I've been doing this. This is how this stuff comes in.
Yeah.
And then we do a guided meditation seeking guidance from our higher self. So give people an opportunity to seek information or guidance or healing from their higher self. And after having kind of primed everybody with, here's the intro to the senses, see what comes through.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I can't wait for your class. And, if anybody has any other questions, we'll put all of your handles down below here. So if people can just click on the website, click on the handles and stuff like that. But if you had to leave everybody with one thing, what would it be?
That's a great question. I'm gonna pull from one of my greatest mentors, one of my best friends, and a guy who helped me spiritually, has helped me personally, has helped me creatively. His thing was always, you got to live your own life, and that's, I guess, at the core of the book, which is seeking your truth. Finding your truth, finding your connection to loving awareness. You want to seek that connection to loving awareness and live it, breathe it, and express it in the way that feels exactly like what you're meant to do. So seek it, find it, live it, and we'll all be better for it.
Yes. We all have our own truth. If only we can find it, right?
Absolutely.
And hopefully they find it by coming to one of your classes and reading your book.
That would be okay too, yeah. If not me, someone else,
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure getting to know you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Till next time, guys.
If you enjoyed this conversation, like it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. If you want some more amazing resources on your path of liberation, head over to liberateyourself.com and sign up for our mailing list. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram at Liberate Hollywood, all one word, or Liberate Emporium, all one word. Until next time, liberate yourself.
Hi, Cristina here, founder of Liberate. I wanted to let you know that all of our amazing practitioners, healers, and intuitives are available for remote sessions. And we are continuously adding new classes, workshops, and meditations to serve you every week. Thank you for joining us, and I hope that we can help you liberate yourself.